Hi, Sachsenhausen. Polonia gwarna, parna, Germania richtig dicker Heil. Sachsenhausen. Wirtycie jak bambusik, trupie łebki to kaktusy Heil. Es lebe kule to Kampf.
Welcome to Descendants Stuff, a podcast by and for the descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners, working together to uncover the unanswered questions of its history. Sachsenhausen was a Nazi concentration camp located in Oranienburg, Germany, used from 1936 through April 1945. It was used as a labor camp, with a network of subcamps and worksites around the region, as well as a prison camp, death camp, medical experimentation center, and SS training ground. It was also the administrative center for all Nazi concentration camps. We are Jakob, Kelsey, and Nicole, three descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners. Though our relatives were imprisoned for different reasons, we've discovered we have much in common. In each episode, we interview other descendants, researchers, and even survivors, sharing stories, memories, and research to build a clearer picture of the past, one that goes beyond the records. Through these conversations, we honor those who suffered and died at Sachsenhausen and strengthen our collective understanding of our own ancestors' experiences.
This is
Lagerstraße.
Lagerstraße. We're here, Nicole,
Kelsey,
And Jacob.
We are Descendant Stuff Podcast, and we are here at Sachsenhausen Concentration Camp Memorial and Museum for the 81st commemoration of the liberation of the camp. We are standing here on Lagerstraße, outside of the camp wall and gates. This is the road that the prisoners would have walked down to get to the Klinkerwerk, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
and it would have been the road that they walked down to enter the camp for the very first time. If they had arrived at the Oranienburg train station, they would have walked through this town, through the streets, past houses, down this street into the gates that we're standing in front of now.
So this would be the way our ancestors had
Yes.
walked, the way we just came through and through these gates.
We are not in our regular podcast studio in Tower 8 now because we want to show some things or describe some things while we are walking. And we have something special later to talk about, and that's going to be at the end.
For now, you get to join us on a tour of the camp.
We're headed towards Tower A from the Lagerstraße. Again, this is the way our ancestors would have entered the camp.
At this point, we're passing the commandant's house, who was at the as soon as you enter the gate. Some prisoners would have stood here in this small plaza before entering in Tower A, which is the official door into the camp. And what does it say on the door into the camp?
It says Arbeit macht frei.
And what would that mean in English?
Something like working makes you free. It's very stupid because in those days they were placing people inside the camp who were categorized as so-called asocials, for example, asocial or working shy, because Nazis categorized people like this just to have a new category what could be filled up with prisoners, so they would have more working force, and also because they had the idea of educating so-called working shy people to more willing to work people, and so as kind of a ironic thing, so if you work you will be free. What was nonsense.
So you walk through those gates underneath Tower A. Tower A, where we usually have our podcast studio.
And now we're inside the prison.
That's right. We're inside the walls. We've passed the tower. Above us is the tower. That would be our podcast studio. We're looking at it right now. But back when our ancestors were here, it wouldn't have been a podcast studio, obviously. It was holding the single machine gun that was meant to control the camp.
Now we are at the Appellplatz, right after we passed Tower A. It's Appellplatz. Appellplatz is a very important place for the concentration camp, especially in case of those who arrived in June 38. We know pretty much what happened, more or less. Kelsey, what happened with our ancestors here on Appelplatz once they entered the camp?
Right, so they would have arrived in their clothes that they would have worn, their normal outfits, and they would have had to stand here in this really large half-circle shape, and they would have gotten a speech, a special speech, which was a combination of insults and striking fear to tell them about what this place will be like for them. And then those prisoners would have to stand here. Often it involved a really brutal beating to demonstrate to the prisoners to take this seriously and to have that fear. Then they would have gone for an inspection into the Revier, which we can see all the barracks from here because that was the design. All the buildings kind of radiate out from this half circle from the center point. And so they would go into that Revier, get inspected, also remove their clothes, take away all their belongings, get a little tag for their belongings that they would never be able to get back again for the most part. They would be head shaved and then eventually processed so that they could be assigned a barrack.
If we talk about a certain barrack, in my case, I know where my great-grandfather was placed in. It was barrack 31. Today it's a little bit tricky to find because it's not marked as 31 anymore. Later they turned it into an enlargement of the infirmary, so now you would see on the sign just infirmary, but we know that barrack 31 used to be there.
And what was special about barrack 31? What do you remember Heinrich saying?
Heinrich mentioned that it was some kind of display barrack, so something where people would be treated better, and he thought it's ironic because he didn't know why it was called like this, because he couldn't see any better treatment or something like this. But there's something unusual. So-called asocials, the category Heinrich was placed in, usually had those barracks a little bit further away, like in the third row or even further, and barrack 31 is in the second row.
Which is kind of like a higher status barrack, which would have nicer conditions. For example, proper furniture, maybe it was painted as opposed to bare wood. It would have proper heat and electricity, which we know other barracks would have had none of those things.
To make it clear, it was still terrible, but in comparison to those other barracks, it might have been better. And now we just learned a couple of days ago what it actually meant to have a display barrack. Certain barracks and places were meant to be displayed, like to be shown to guests, like from other countries, to show them how nice a concentration camp is and how the living conditions are in the camp. So 31 was a barrack with special conditions, so you could show it to other people, so conditions were better.
It was meant to show the dignitaries and the different guests from different countries around the world who were friendly with the Reich. They were brought in to see this model camp that Sachsenhausen was. And that barrack would have shown that how under control and perfect, what a model it was inside. And it would have hidden the conditions of maybe the brutalities that were happening around the camp, or the disorganization or poor conditions in other parts of the camp that would have been kept hidden.
So it was almost like a living propaganda barrack.
Yeah, because even there were some people who were, I believe there were certain types of journalists or people who might not have had a neutral opinion of the camp brought in so that they could see what it was like for themselves. So of course these people, anyone coming into the camp administration wouldn't want a bad report coming out of it.
So pretty close is what's left of the infirmary, and also part of the infirmary was kind of a show infirmary, so something what actually looked better than the real infirmary looked like, to be shown to guests.
So now we're walking away from the Appellplatz and away from Heinrich's barrack, and we're walking towards the infirmary, which is called the Revier.
Krankenrevier. So I know that Heinrich was in Krankenrevier at the end of his time in Sachsenhausen, and he had tuberculosis, but he survived the camp and the infirmary. But not everybody was as lucky and was able to survive the camp.
Right now we're in front of the Revier. You can hear the gravel and the sand that we're on, and it's kind of muddy because it's been raining, and so many prisoners describe the mud used as torture device and for doing sport, for rolling in the mud, things like this. And so in front of the Revier, there's a ramp that goes down, and that's because you would take bodies in and out of here upon their death. So we're going to walk down that ramp. It might have been used for other things, but we're not experts, so I don't know what those are for.
It's definitely wide enough to drive down with a car or like a trailer or something to pick up heavy loads or something like that. The door is locked, so we have to walk up again, but we have a different way to get down there.
So the Revier consists of two buildings that are kind of a little bit parallel to each other, and there are a couple of ways to get in, and there's a tunnel that connects them. So we've just entered one of the buildings, and we can go down a set of stairs, and this is one set of stairs that lead to that tunnel, and we can read the panel here actually.
So the tunnel is connecting to infirmary barracks, barrack R1 and R2. Why is it connected?
They could walk from the inside across to the other barrack as opposed to the outside, and so they could use that corridor. However, this corridor was also used for storing dead bodies. And it's a fairly small corridor. It's 2 to 3 meters wide and 6 to 8 meters long and 2 meters high. And so in this corridor, corpses of inmates who had starved to death or had died in other causes would be stacked in here until their bodies could be transported to the crematorium in Berlin.
And why Berlin?
Because in Sachsenhausen, in this camp, they didn't yet have any way to dispose of bodies. And so the Revier performed kind of an important function in order to make things look kind of not suspicious. Every body that was dead in the camp had to undergo theoretical autopsy and have an incision in them to demonstrate that somebody looked at them and then could determine the cause of death. And really that cause of death was picked from a list that if you go into the Revier, you can see one of about 7 options of what to choose for that death. Then they could get a tag and have that certificate of death. And so when they were sent to Berlin, because there was no crematorium at Sachsenhausen, then they could receive those bodies and witness that there had been some theoretical autopsy and then cremate those bodies. So there's a large amount of bodies being sent to Berlin at this time. And shortly afterwards, because there started to get such a high number of bodies that could cause like maybe attention being brought to this camp, that's when Sachsenhausen decided to make its own crematorium to make sure that that wouldn't be seen.
And that was built in April 1940. So the camp was operating from 1936 until 1940 with no crematorium here.
Right, and then in the winter of 1940, there was the highest number of deaths so far happened. About 800 prisoners died in just a matter of a few days in that winter of January 1940. That's when they realized they had a problem.
Uh-huh.
So here we are. We are walking through this small hallway. Apparently, the SS didn't ever want to come down here unaccompanied because it was too creepy, so they always made a prisoner come with them.
Kelsey, you're a descendant of Max Faybush. When did he die?
Max died on January 14th, 1940, which is why I have learned a little bit about what the conditions were like in January of that year.
So, Nicole, you just said the crematorium in Sachsenhausen was built in March.
April. It was completed in April.
It was
The
completed
first one.
in April 1940. So, Max died before that time.
We don't have a record of what exactly happened to him in terms of like day by day exactly who did what. But reading descriptions from former prisoners who survived, they describe if a prisoner died in the barrack, that prisoner would have been stacked at the barrack in a pile of bodies. And then it was stacked by prisoners and then carried by prisoners. After roll call, those bodies would have to be counted, and then the prisoners could bring the bodies over to this revier. They would get processed for being tagged and have the inspection and an incision in them. They would have been stacked in this basement floor in order to be weight to then be carted out up the ramp and taken to Berlin for cremation.
So where we are just right now, Max was probably brought down. His body was here for a while, and then he was picked up and brought to the crematorium Baumschulenweg in Berlin.
Yes.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
You can't. I just realized you can't stand at all in here.
No, it's pretty low. The ceiling is very low.
Listeners, that hallway is so short, Jakob can't stand up straight.
So we're headed out of the Riviera. We're going to walk past Station Z. The way it was explained to me was the letters that were used. Tower A, that's where you come in. Station Z, the end of the alphabet would be the only way to leave. So, but since we're on the opposite end of the camp, we walk by there first. Station Z is where there were execution pit, there was a gas chamber, where the second crematorium was built after the first one was discontinued. The first one was nearby. It was actually right behind this wall over here. And as we walk past the wall, maybe I can show you two something that Astrid showed me.
Sure.
Okay. So we can look through a little window in the wall. We can see the first crematorium. Not the building, but we can see an outline of the building, just like the barracks, made in the same way to show where it was, mark where it was. So we'll be able to look through that, see it. But there's something very special there, actually, now.
Okay, so we're walking now on the left side of the triangle, upwards. It's pretty cold, actually. The weather is not really nice, but there's a lot of groups with young people around. And that's nice that they apparently care.
So you see this white strip. There's a little white strip on the wall. It's not marked.
Like a gap.
Like a gap. It's like a little window to be able to view through. And again, you can look through. You'll see the outline for that barrack. But Dr. Astrid Lai, she actually, who we interviewed just the other day on this podcast, she explained to me that, she actually meets with many descendants. So you can see it doesn't have the metal outline, but you can see the stones. So that's where the first crematorium was.
Yeah, it's like gravel on the ground marking the shape of a former building.
And there is one small tree growing out of it. Can you see the tree? The tree is very special. Astrid was Dr. Lai. She was helping a descendant. She meets with many descendants, and she was helping a descendant find out whether their ancestor had been cremated in Berlin or cremated here at Sachsenhausen. And after some research with that descendant, she did find out that her ancestor had been cremated here at Sachsenhausen in that first crematorium. She came to visit. She was here visiting, and when they went to the spot, Dr. Lai took her back behind that wall. It's not an area that we can walk into normally, but the visitor, who was the descendant like us, saw a tree growing out of it. And she said to Dr. Lai that it reminded her, or it made her think that it was kind of something from the souls, the spirits of our ancestors who were cremated there, the ashes, and like some new life growing out of it. And it was very touching and symbolic for her. And Dr. Lai told me that ever since she said that, she promised that descendant she was going to take care of the tree. The tree was, it's a small tree now, but it was just sprouted. And she told me that she's been taking care of it now ever since, and that even she waters it every day that it doesn't rain. And when she goes on vacation, she assigns someone to make sure that that tree is okay, because she wants to see it grow into a big, tall tree. And I can imagine if we come back in here in, say, 20 years, maybe, we'll actually see that tree growing up above the wall. Yeah.
So if you're visiting Sachsenhausen and you're following the wall, it is this white column in the wall, and it marks this gap where there would have been a door that would have given access from inside the camp. Those doors would have opened, and it would have been easy to access the crematorium, and then they would close and still become a prison.
We're working towards Station Z, but we're going to curve around, and we're passing Heinrich's barrack again from the other side, and also the nice big tree growing right in between that barrack and the next ones, which, as the other descendant said, it's beautiful to see life now growing from a place that was meant to take life.
This is the weekend for the 81st commemoration of the liberation of the camp. And of course we're here to attempt all those events. But there's also another reason why we're here.
Well, we met back in 2024, the September meeting. That was the networking meeting for Descendants, and a project called What Voice Do We Have? And as a result of our meeting, there were 3 different kind of modules created, or 3 ideas for different projects by the memorial itself. One was a website for descendants, one was a workshop module about descendants and their ancestors for educational purposes for school groups who are coming to visit the memorial, and one was an exhibition. And that exhibition actually opened this weekend as part of the 81st commemoration. When we came and we were together and talking about these possibilities back in September of 24, and over the years since, because we've been working on these projects since, I had never imagined that this exhibition would be what it is.
Right, so we're here to visit that exhibit, but we're also in that exhibit.
That's correct.
But we have a huge campsite, and I don't know how many exhibitions there are, like 14, 15, I don't know. Why does the campsite actually need another exhibition?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, depending on perspective. But one is, overall, the memories, right, of the survivors and the witnesses, those are being lost as we lose survivors and witnesses. And who still has those memories, or who is doing the research to try to uncover them, are those survivors' descendants, to tell the story from a descendant's perspective, but also to make sure that I think younger people can relate to a living history, and young people who are visiting the memorial be able to see that this is a history that still affects people who are alive today. It's not just something that's from the past and it's gone and it happened and it's no longer, but it's something that has had ripple effects throughout the last 8 decades.
Right, because for some of us in the exhibition, it's taken 80 years to find out this information, and that's why this isn't just a place that was in the historical past. It's a place that is still relevant and holds sometimes urgent information for us to be able to understand our families and our own histories. In addition, I think that exhibit is for the audience of other descendants of prisoners who visit here, that they can understand that maybe their isolated or kind of lonely history living with this story in their family, they can come to this camp and see that their story might have similarities with other descendants here and see themselves as an important part of the living history of current day impact of this place.
So the exhibition is not just about the biography of our ancestors, those people who died in the camp here or survived it or died shortly later. It's also about us. And I have to say, I didn't feel so comfortable with it in the first moment because I think, well, who am I? I'm not an expert, I'm not an historian, so why?
I don't think we're experts on the concentration camp system. We're not experts on World War II. We're not experts in that period of history. We're not even historians, us. We're not trained historians, but we are public historians and community historians because we are telling our stories. We are sharing our stories. We're working to uncover our stories. And I also feel like because of the support of the memorial, we have a team of researchers behind us that's helping us along the way. But they really insisted that with this project, this be done from our perspectives and with our input, not to have someone come and write a biography about our ancestors, not to have someone come and write a story about us and our relation to them, but to have us work with someone to actually write our own story, which is the process that we used creating that exhibit. We were co-writing right with the exhibit team.
I think it can feel uncomfortable, certainly for me, to have a spotlight on my story when I think we're not that special. The same thing happened to so many other people. That's okay. But also, from the perspective of the memorial, they want to get away from people coming to this place and having one single voice of authority tell you how to see history, and instead tell the history and the impact of this place in the voice of people who have been affected by it. And that's what's the exciting power of this exhibit, is that visitors can see this place from our perspective and maybe respect it and honor it from our perspective, and that other descendants can see that their perspective matters here and that they could be invited to be a part of telling its history as well and its current day impact. That's what feels exciting and special.
I think that makes it very special.
What really changed my mind was something I experienced in the school. I was at the beginning of this year in a school, and I was invited as a descendant and I had to talk about Sachsenhausen. So I did, and I prepared myself. I had some books along and made sure everything I said based on like facts and stuff, and yeah, students were listening, and yeah, okay. But then they came up with questions about me and about my family, like about what did my grandfather tell me? What did I ask him? How did it feel like for the family? What kind of effects? And they woke up. They were so interested and had so many questions, and they could have kept on going for hours and hours. So I saw, okay, it's not really about me, but it's about what I can tell about the effects. And if I look from this point of view, I'm totally fine to be part of an exhibition if it helps people to understand more about what happened here.
So before we go to the exhibition, though, we're very close. So we started out in the Appelplatz. We moved to the left side of the triangle. We've walked around the back, and we're now here on the right side of the triangle, standing outside of the so-called small camp.
It's kind of like we walked around a rainbow from one end to the other end of the rainbow, and now at the end of this rainbow is the small camp.
Is this small camp, and this small camp is where my ancestor was brought when he came here. His name was Max During, and the small camp actually is separate from the triangle. It's a little rectangle on the bottom right-hand side, kind of hanging off. When you see our podcast logo, you can actually see it on that overview map of that one piece that makes that triangle not symmetrical anymore. It wasn't originally part of the camp.
No, it's an extension.
When was it built?
It was built especially for the November events in 1938, and this is actually something my great-grandfather wrote about. He said the time before Jews were placed in the camp, the time the camp was preparing for this event. So the small camp was also called the Jew camp because it was especially made to imprison all those people who were victims of the Reichskristallnacht, Reichspogromnacht.
That one night, those couple days that followed, the population of this camp skyrocketed. because of that large group of prisoners being brought here. About, I think it was 6,300, was it? And overnight, just from one night to the next, to have the camp population grow in such a way that there were already harsh conditions, not a lot of food, and all of a sudden you had thousands of more people to feed, to house. It just made the camp conditions even worse, just in a matter of days.
Do you know in which barrack Max had to be?
Max was in barrack 60.
Let's go there.
Yeah, we're facing barrack 38, which I think we should maybe stop in on the way there just to see. It's a rebuilt barrack. It's been rebuilt to make it this side of it. Barrack 38 is the first building you see when you walk into the small camp.
Today, at the time, it would have been completely filled with barracks and it would have had neighbors. But right now, it's one of only 2 built barracks standing in this small camp.
That's right. And the 38, it has an exhibition about Jewish prisoners. It also has a rebuilt barrack room, so we can actually see
Would have looked like with furniture inside at that time.
So yesterday we were in here for the Mourners Kaddish, also as part of the decentralized commemoration event.
This barrack is unusual looking. Inside you can hear the wood creaking. You look at the paint on the walls and it's peeling. It's black and charred from a fire. And that happened at some point after a visit from the Israeli government came to the camp, and that fire was lit in protest of that visit.
Yeah, it was an attack to the camp from neo-Nazis.
So when we look into this rebuilt barrack room, there's a sign above it.
Yeah, it says Unterbringung, like accommodation, from 1941 until 1943, 250 prisoners.
So 250 prisoners would have been in that small room in between those years, but from what I understand, during the earlier years, like during the November pogrom time, it would have been double or triple also later. So even though it was meant for the 250, which would be crowded enough, actually it was much, much more, making the conditions very overcrowded and unimaginable.
And in 1938, there was not furniture in these rooms. These wooden beds that have 3 bunks to them, that would have had multiple prisoners in each bunk, those would not have been there. From what I understand from reading descriptions, for example, from Leon Salet in 1938, he describes how they had straw sacks that were just stacked in this room, and otherwise it would be empty. And then there would be the day room, which is where we're standing in now, and that has tables and benches and cabinets where prisoners would have kept their belongings and would have had to keep all these things clean. This is where they would have eaten. It also would have been where there was, if someone decided to have the heating, they would have heated up soup and things like that in here.
I think, as we see it now, it's probably more close to what was Baracke Vorzeigebehandlung, like display barrack.
Yeah.
How it looks like is, it's not nice, but it's still like, yeah, okay, it's crowded, but this usually was not the case. People were sleeping on the floor, they had diarrhea, they were lying in the diarrhea, they couldn't get up if they wanted to, they just could sleep on one side of the body because there was not enough space.
It was horrific.
Yes.
Unimaginable.
Yes.
Even the furniture and the architecture of the barrack was used for torture. For example, in the middle of the night, SS would come in and wake everybody up, have them stand up and follow really specific orders. They made, Leon Salet describes how in the middle of the night they were woken up and told to get on the top of the rafters and on top of the cabinets, and to jump down until they broke their legs. And then suddenly the SS troops would leave, and they'd have to care for anybody who survived that and hope that they survived until the next morning.
For visitors to the memorial site, on the other side of this reconstructed barrack, there is a display, an exhibit on Jewish prisoners that's actually 2 floors and goes down underground. It has a lot of information, a lot of artifacts, and actually just yesterday we were with another descendant who showed us a photograph of his mother down in that exhibit, and then did an interview with him soon after, so you'll be able to hear his story as well. We're back outside and coming around the corner of Barrack 38, just 2-3 barracks away from 60, where Max was. So as we come around the corner, we also see preserved the damage that was done to the wood during the arson attack that we talked about earlier, and there are glass casings over it so that we can see the damage and know that it happened. And now we're standing over at Barrack 60. Now these barracks are, like Kelsey said, there's only 2 buildings, so these are outlines. They have stones, like railroad stones filled with them to kind of mark where their footprint would have been, and like a metal rail around it. And then right behind us, actually, diagonal by 1, is Barrack 39, which is where our exhibit is on display. Do you think we should go in?
Yeah, just to explain the barracks, they are separated in 2 parts. There's an entrance in the middle, and there's a left wing and a right wing. And in the middle there's like toilets or something.
And a washroom.
What looks close like toilets, yeah, like a washroom. So kind of those facilities. And on each side, left and right, there is a smaller room for like time during the day. Was meant to be with benches and tables. And on each side there is a larger room meant for bunk beds and sleeping. So now we go into Barrack 39 and move to the left.
So we're in Barrack 39. We're just at the entrance to the exhibit. Entangled Pasts, Descendants speak.
In German would be verflochtene Geschichte, Nachkommen erzählen.
This is the culmination of the last, I'd say, almost, year and a half of our work together. But it's the culmination, as Kelsey said earlier, of over 80 years of research and trying to dig up stories and uncover the stories that were hidden.
I really love this description on the panel that we see when we enter this exhibit. It talks about that the exclusion and persecution and violence experienced under National Socialism continue to affect families today, and that it spans generations. And it raises questions about memory, responsibility, and belonging. And it describes how the voices of descendants bring to life how family histories live on in stories and in silence. And it allows those voices which have had a little chance to speak to be heard. And especially it allows visitors into this exhibit to reflect on their own role in the present, to understand memory as a living process that looks ahead just as much as it looks back. And it depends on how the visitors to this exhibit decide to go on in the future.
So that was kind of the introduction of the exhibition, but the main parts, the most important objects of the exhibitions are wall panels. That's how you call it, wall panels?
Yeah, these are display panels against the wall, and each of these display panels have a larger than life size illustration of us. So I'm standing in front of a panel with myself and my mom, and the panel says Discovery in a Box. And it talks about what our experience was discovering our family history. And then next to that, it has the family member who is here, Max Feibusch, and it tells a biography of him, what he was like before Sachsenhausen, how he got to Sachsenhausen, and what would have happened as his final fate when he was here, which is that he died inside the camp. And then it also has a panel that talks about what it means to be a descendant, and I had said, ask questions, because I hope that visitors would reflect and ask their questions about their own families. And then next to us is
Jakob.
Yeah, it's about me. Well, there's also an illustration of myself showing me recording a podcast, and there are some citations, like there's one what I did. It says, poverty, shame, and insecurity have long prevented the commemoration of Heinrich's courage and strength. Because Heinrich was arrested as a so-called asocial prisoner, and after the war he had a really hard time to get recognized as a victim of the Nazis, and he was not. So that's something what I think is really important. That's why I pointed out the sentence. And also, like it was with Kelsey, there is just a part about the biography of Heinrich, and there's a part where I tell something, and there's a part where something is told about me. And what I really like about this exhibition, and that was something I was worried about because we are not the historians, I think it's important that we don't spread wrong facts, and that's something they did really cool. Like here is like the biography of Heinrich, and for example there is the word Klinkerwerk, like Klinkerberg, the place where bricks were made in concentration camp of Sachsenhausen, and it's in black, and there's a number 6, and there is a panel between Kelsey and my part of the exhibition explaining certain words, like for example Klinkerwerk. So this is a part the memorial did to make sure those important words are explained in the correct way with facts, nothing out of context. So this makes sure if you read it and you want to have some context, you don't know something, you really have some cool sources for it. So now we've seen one room, like the smaller room.
It would have been the day room, and now we're going into where that would have been the sleeping quarters.
And there's more about 3 prisoners. And I can see somebody who looks like Nicole.
Yeah, it's me. It's just a little taller than me.
Let's go there.
So this is my panel. The heading on the first panel says Uncovering My Family History. Kelsey didn't know who her ancestors were, her ancestor here. And I had an idea of who my ancestors were, but only as far back as my grandmother on in her side. She'd never talked about her family, her parents. So I actually didn't know that any of my ancestors had been imprisoned in Sachsenhausen specifically up until about 3.5 years ago when I was doing research with my cousin. We also didn't know our great-grandfather's name. So we knew his last name. And in researching a family tree, we came across his name on someone else's family tree and started to research him, reached out to the memorial, and the memorial confirmed that yes, Max During was here, and this is his barrack number, and this is his prisoner number, and that's all we know other than that he was brought here as part of the November pogrom and the history that's connected to that. But there's nothing else known about him specifically in his personal life at that time.
But that dialogue with the memorial, you being able to connect with them and them giving you really helpful clues, let you unlock more research for yourself that you could do independently. Yes. So it was really helpful to have the memorial as a resource.
Right. Yes. Now we have his name. We have his wife's name. We have his son's name, his youngest son, who we didn't know. My grandmother had a younger sibling. We now know that she had a younger sibling who perished. We found the location. There's actually some Stolpersteine for Max and his wife and his child and grandchild in Hamburg. So we found those. We also were able to connect with someone who did a little bit of research and found his gravesite. So I've gone from not knowing his name to being able to visit his gravesite, and we're working to get a gravestone made. Not only that, but then here, his story is memorialized. Our family is memorialized here.
And your other panel says a network of descendants.
That's us.
And that is us. And that is also the other people who helped you find out more information.
Yes.
Like that you just described, that you uncovered.
That's correct.
By being able to connect with other descendants, you ended up knowing more than you would have if you were just looking around on your own.
Yes. So because of reaching out to the memorial with the request for information about my ancestor, they contacted... Actually, it was my cousin who reached out, and then they contacted him a few months later and invited him to apply to be part of a networking meeting. He forwarded it to me and said, this is more your speed, plus he has a family, and it was harder for him. So I went with it, and I got accepted, and I came here. Kelsey was my roommate. Jakob was the first person who I met as part of the meeting. And throughout those four days together, we learned a lot from each other, but we also we started to actually produce this podcast. So out of those, we were talking about 3 projects earlier by the memorial, which were this exhibit, a workshop module, and a website, but other projects came out of that meeting as well. And those were the projects that we started as Descendants, including this project.
Let's get back to the exhibition. There were some restrictions. I think we had like 3,000
characters, which was a good thing to do because it's helpful when you come into this exhibit to not feel overwhelmed.
And everything is displayed in German and English, so it's twice the space what's going to be used up anyway. But in case I want to know more, let's say about Nicole, there's a great way to do so.
Right here in the exhibition is a video display that has the videos of us describing other details about our histories and our stories, that you can pick up an audio wand and hear it and see the video of each of us.
Let's check out Nicole.
Actually, in first grade, I had to make a family tree. And as I was making the family tree, you also had to ask your
So that's cool. So if I really want to know more, if I'm already done with the exhibition, I can watch the video. And there are QR codes on all the panels, so I can also watch those videos online.
That's right.
Maybe at home when I'm done on the train back. That's really cool.
Each of our display panels has a little QR code underneath our story that anyone with their phone can scan and then get a link to that video, which we will include at the bottom of the link for this podcast.
Check the show notes. Yeah, that's actually really another aspect to this exhibition that's a little bit different from a lot of the older exhibitions, is that there's parts of it that can be seen by people who can't make it to Sachsenhausen. So for example, I received a message from a cousin who lives in Italy just 2 days ago saying, congratulations on your opening. We saw some pictures, but even more important is we watched your interview online. So now we know more about what you talked about in the exhibit. So I think that's a great way for anyone listening who can't make it to Sachsenhausen for this exhibit at this time, or can't come for a while but wants to know more. You can watch these videos.
Now we're standing on the other side of the room, quite far away from all those panels, but what I really like is the size of the letters they have chosen, because wherever I stand, I can read all the headlines, and it catches my attention. It catches my attention, and I can get closer and read it, and it doesn't matter where to start in this exhibition. I don't have to start necessarily with Kelsey, especially like when I'm in a group maybe, like people would maybe stand in front of me so I couldn't see anything, so I could keep on going until there's something what's free to read. So it doesn't matter where I start, I always get the context.
I think even within each Descendants panels, it doesn't matter where you start. Even though we wrote it in a particular order, you can actually read any section in any order and still learn the story. It doesn't take away from any of the other parts of the story. Also, something that's different about this exhibition is that when you walk in here, you notice that it's in color.
Yes.
It is the one exhibition, I believe, in this whole concentration camp memorial that is not gray.
Or brown.
Or black and white.
And that's really cool.
One of the things that we mentioned earlier was that when we met each other and we worked with the memorial in September of 2024, they were asking us to be a part of thinking about this exhibition, thinking about a website for the memorial, and also workshop modules. And so what is really exciting and what we're looking at right now while we're in the exhibition is that there's kind of like a version of each of our stories. So there's a mini version of each of our stories on a piece of paper that are for workshops with students who come and visit the memorial and come and visit the exhibition, that they would spend a day here and see the camp, be introduced to it, and then they would get these worksheets. And Jakob, can you tell us what you're seeing with the worksheet that is about Heinrich?
There are some questions those groups have to think about and find answers. So first question is, why was Heinrich imprisoned in Sachsenhausen? So this is something you can figure out by reading the small version, but you can also figure it out by reading the large panels or watch the video. Discuss why his family didn't talk about his imprisonment in Sachsenhausen. Why does Jacob think it's important to visit the memorial in Sachsenhausen? And why does he want to get in contact with other descendants? Another question is, just in 2020, the German parliament recognized so-called asocials as victims of the National Socialism. So what did this late recognition meant for victims and survivors? Yeah, and another thing is, what kind of documents helped Jacob to discover the history of his great-grandfather, and why would it have been important to Heinrich to get recognized as a victim? And what I really like is there are some questions actually not about this exhibition, but something where students can dig into their own family and history. So do you speak in your family about National Socialism? Or what do you think if you enter the memorial in Sachsenhausen and the word asocial is still used? So what do you think does it mean for people called like that?
I have a question for you both. So I know that these panels are not about us. This story is not about us, but we're a big part of it. And we saw this exhibition installed for the first time just a couple days ago. How did you feel when you walked in here for the first time and saw this exhibition installed and our work come to life?
I got excited about it, just thinking that it was bigger than us, and I thought it was exciting to see the panels that say, are you a descendant of a former prisoner of Sachsenhausen concentration camp? And that's one of the first things you see, because then when you're looking at these other panels, you can imagine yourself and what you would want to use to show your story, even if you had very little evidence of your own story.
How about you?
I knew how it would look like, but I totally did not expect it to be this large and so impressive. You know, they're like little tiny pictures on the thing, but if you come closer to those panels, they actually are pretty large.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing.
Yeah. For me, it kind of took my breath away. All the overwhelm that I thought I might feel the first time or the second time I came here and didn't really experience all kind of came at once. And it was, strange thing was, it was harder to walk in here to this room for the first time than it was for me to walk into the memorial for the first time that I came here.
We had a little opening thing.
A reception, yeah?
A reception, yeah.
So on Saturday, April 18th, 2026, 2 days ago, we actually had an opening reception for this exhibit where our family members were able to attend. Relatives of the team who put this together were able to attend. Other descendants and even a survivor of this camp came and attended this opening.
And we had a discussion panel, which was really nice, where people could ask us questions. Some of those people said, asked some of the questions that are actually in the workshop module, which was exciting. One of them asked, what was it like knowing about the former prisoner in your family, and when did you find out about that story? And my mom answered that question and said, I was basically the same age as I am now when I first heard our story. And so I think it was maybe surprising for the people in the room to realize that even though this has been around for 80 years, that the information is new to us. And so it was helpful to be that voice of a living memory for the audience that was there.
I still want to point out the thing with the survivor, because he wasn't there when we started with the panel. It was kind of a weird thing. Suddenly there was some kind of interruption. Everybody was looking, hey, what's going on there? There's some noise. But then everybody saw, oh, wait a minute, we know that guy.
And the room went silent.
Everything stopped.
Someone was in the middle of talking and giving remarks, opening remarks. They stopped talking, and those of us who recognized who was coming in, most of us cried.
I think your mom told me that I gasped when I saw him.
I don't even have a memory of that moment. I didn't, because it was so wonderful to think that
Bogdan?
He had just finished his remarks to a large room full of people, And that lasted for 45 minutes, and we were shocked that he would come straight from his remarks with a large audience and into our small space, that he would enter a prisoner barrack voluntarily in order to listen to us and our stories. And when we asked him, or we thanked him for coming, he said, "Of course, it's my responsibility."
That was really cool, because who are we? You know, we will never ever be able to replace people like him, and we will never ever be able to achieve what he already did. But it's so cool that somebody like him, like a real survivor from this camp, came to us, to our opening.
We can't replace him, but we can honor him. Yeah?
Definitely.
And to me, it felt like such an honor that he was there.
Yes.
It was so special to have him there. He wasn't one of our ancestors. He was a Polish prisoner. And for me, that was touching, especially because my grandfather, no relation to the great-grandfather who was imprisoned in Sachsenhausen, but my mother's father was Polish, and he also was a survivor. So I just recognized him in this survivor came down to us, and it was just such an honor and so touching to be able to shake his hand.
Hey, where are we going actually?
Well, we have left the triangle, the geometry of terror, and we left out of Tower A, and now we're walking into the former area that would have been where the Commandant got to be with the SS troops. And today, in current day, that infrastructure is not there, and what is here is a garden of memorial stones inside of a forest. And we're walking towards a really special memorial stone. It's the first one that was created to memorialize a so-called asocial prisoner, which happens to be what my family member was categorized as, and yours as well.
Yes, and his name is Clemens Paul Feige, and Clemens Paul Feige was the great-grandfather of Hilger.
He was one of the participants in our exhibit.
Yeah.
And there's a panel about him in the exhibit.
And the family built this memorial. It has his prisoner number on it, and the different groups of the relatives of his all gathered stones and put them inside, that you can see they're cast inside this cement structure that is a memorial to him. And you can read all about his Clemens' story and Hilger and Insa's story in our exhibit.
Okay, now we slowly have to head back to the visitor center.
We've already left Tower A. We've already left the walls of the camp, and we'll head back on the camp road, Lagerstraße, to the visitor center, as Jakob said.
So, looking back, we had a process from September 2024 to now. It's April 2026. What's your conclusion?
I feel proud and honored to be able to share that story. I feel very lucky that there was a team available, which included you two. So it's a team of researchers, but also descendants, to help and kind of piece together these stories and be able to honor our ancestors. Kelsey?
It's just a privilege to be a part of this process, to be able to find out this family history and have access to connect with descendants and the memorial. I'm just very grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What about you, Jakob?
Well, I think what we have achieved is so cool. Our ancestors have been tortured in this place. They have been imprisoned here for a long time. Yeah, Kelsey, your ancestor was killed here, and Nicole, your ancestor died shortly after he was released. And now we have an exhibition which shows their name. We have half of the barrack where the story of 5 prisoners is told in such a cool way, in such an accessible way for students. I don't think we could have achieved more.
What do you think you'll continue to do to continue this work beyond the podcast, of course?
I end up, through this work and through visiting, learn more about different aspects of the camp. So last year when we came, I learned about the Spanish prisoners, and then we got to understand that more. So right now what's on my mind is understanding that there was a brothel at Sachsenhausen and getting to connect with the people doing the research to understand those stories and specifically those individuals so that they can be respected and recognized in current day. They never even got compensation or recognition during their time because of the shame and the stigma, and that people blamed them even after they left for that. So that's interesting to me. I want to learn more about that. I also am interested in the stories of the homosexual prisoners that had that label and all these other groups that I'm interested in meeting and connecting with. So for me, I want to keep on connecting with other descendants to make sure that the totality, as much as possible, of who came here and why they came here can be represented.
I don't think I have anything to add to that because you said it so perfectly. I would agree. Same for me.
Same with me.
Yeah, just keep doing this work, keep connecting with other descendants. That said, if you are a descendant listening, please reach out to us. Check the show notes for our website. We have a contact form there. You can get in touch to share your story. You can get in touch to network with other descendants. You can get in touch to ask for help with research and connecting you to the memorial. Just reach out, and we hope to continue growing our descendants network over time and keep these stories alive.
I have one question that's just occurred to me. One of the questions that we got when we had questions from the audience at our opening was asking about the role of the perpetrators. A woman in the room said, "I'm a descendant of a perpetrator. What do you expect from us now?" And Jakob, you answered that question. Can you describe the answer you gave her?
I was kind of the one who had to talk in German because I'm the only one from us descendants who was able to speak German. And it kind of felt as something would be addressed towards me as some kind of a German. And yeah, I answered well. Out of my 4 great-grandfathers, 3 have been in NSDAP. Out of my 2 grandfathers, 1 has been in NSDAP, the other one has been in Waffen-SS. So.
And what is the NSDAP?
National Socialistic German Workers' Party.
So they were members of the party?
Yes.
And that would have been the Nazi Party?
That's the Nazi Party.
And what would that have meant, that they were a member of those parties?
That they joined and they apparently liked it. So, and to me it's, okay, out of those 6, 1 was not part of the thing. And he ended up in concentration camp. So, as a conclusion, I can say most of my family ancestors did like the Nazi shit.
Descendants Stuff Podcast is produced by Jakob Feistauer, Kelsey Snook, and Nicole Wines, 3 descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners and co-creators of the Sachsenhausen Stuff Project. The Descendant Stuff team would like to extend a special thank you to the team at Sachsenhausen Memorial and Museum, especially Dr. Astrid Lai and the members of the Educational Department's project, What Voice Do We Have?, as well as the Descendants Collective Voices of the Next Generation. The theme song, Heil Sachsenhausen, was written by Alexander Kulisiewicz while he was imprisoned at Sachsenhausen and performed by him after the war. It is used with permission from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's Kulisiewicz collection. If you are a Sachsenhausen descendant who would like to share your story, please contact us through our website at www.sachsenhausen-stuff.com or use the Contact Us link in the show notes below.
Heil Sachsenhausen. A jak będę jutro wzdychał lewą nóżką, ci zawtikam. Heil, es lebe Gold, o Kampf.